Coming up on this episode of One-on-One Sports,
we tackle the XFL's opening weekend.
See who's up for grabs in the upcoming NHL trade deadline.
And take a look at potential MLB postseason changes.
All that and so much more.
And it all starts
right now.
Chris Edwards' desk in the Jane and Brian Williams studio. Welcome to the spring premiere of One-on-One Sports. I'm Andrew Vandellis.
And I'm Brad Clear. We have a lot of catching up to do in the world of sports, so let's step up to the plate for the quick hitters. This past weekend saw the re-debut of the XFL, with 4 action-packed games, unique rules, and standout performances by quarterbacks Cardale Jones and P.J. Walker. Andrew, what do you make of this new XFL?
You can't deny it was a huge success. It drew more in one weekend than the entire AAF season did, at least at the gate. And this is just a good sign. And yet, I know this is a Vince McMahon passion project that he wanted to bring back since 2001. But hats off to Oliver Luck for getting it rolling. And you can really tell that he's behind the brains and, the nitty-gritty football aspects of it. And then you have, the stuff like the interviewers going and meeting up with the players almost immediately after a play, it seems like. There's where Vince is, putting his, entertainment in. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I think 3.3 million viewers for the first game was huge, and I'm very excited to keep watching.
I'll say this. There's multiple takeaways I have. First, the major league feel of the games in comparison to AAF, and that's partially a product of the broadcast partners that they have. That's just going to happen when you have ESPN and Fox and ABC versus CBS Sports Network and the NFL Network.
Or TNT or something like that.
Well, just in comparison with the AAF had. Secondly, the quality of play was better than anyone else could have hoped for. I like the wrinkle of having the coaches' play calls. Audible to the audience. I liked it was fun because you got the sound bites with Diana Rossini with the offensive lineman who said, you know what he said. And so I like that aspect of it. I like the play call aspect of it. And the gameplay, and that's the most important thing. The gameplay was better than anyone expected. And especially in the DC game, because it was in a small MLS stadium in Audi Field, the crowd environment was electric.
That's where I was going to say the one area where the XFL comes off short, and this isn't anything that we can really fix at this point, is the venues. I love that DC does it in the DC United Stadium, but I don't think you should be trying to fill up,
And when they announced the different markets, I was saying they should have gone to Red Bull Stadium there and the other places, but like you said, an enormous success of a weekend, and I think they're going to have a great season this year.
I'm very excited. After trading Clint Capella and acquiring Robert Covington in a 4-team trade last week, the Houston Rockets are fully committed to small ball. With 6'7" P.J. Tucker at center and a bunch of shooting and wing defense, Brad, what do you think of the Rockets' new strategy?
So I'll say this. I like it a lot. I'm very much in favor of it. With that being said, it does not change the ceiling that they had prior to making these trades and what they have now. With that being said, the large criticism of this strategy is where's the size going to come when you're playing Anthony Davis and Rudy Gobert and Nikola Jokic, right? But what's not accounted for within that argument is the flip side of it. When you have the floor more open for James Harden and Russell Westbrook, who gets to the rim at will and would be surrounded by 4 shooters. When you have multiple perimeter defenders who are versatile and switchable, you have James Harden, who very silently is one of the best interior defenders that there has been in the last couple of years in the NBA. So to me, I don't look at it as much as they don't have the size to guard those guys, which they don't. I look at it as how are teams going to be able to match up with them when, let's look at the example the other night when they were playing the Celtics. Enes Kanter was in the game, and guarding him was P.J. Tucker. On defense, it incentivizes the other team's center to go for post-ups with the mismatch. The other team's going to be pursuing 2s. The Rockets are going to be pursuing 3s. That right there is an inherent mathematical advantage.
I'll make it brief. I think it is, in the same way, not raising the ceiling at all for them. I think, they're not going to make a very deep.
No, they're a second-round team.
Like exactly. But it works for their styles, and I think it complements play that, people like Russ and Harden, and even now Robert Covington that you can bring in just for this sole reason. Mike D'Antoni's a smart coach. I don't really know how to grade it, if anything like that, but I don't think it's a bad
I'll say one last point before we move on. I'm happy that D'Antoni gets to go small ball crazy in the last season of his contract.
Fair enough.
After a delay and a revised trade package, the Red Sox, Twins, and Dodgers finally completed a multiplayer cash and prospect exchanging trade that will send Mookie Betts to the Dodgers. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this massive trade?
it left me scratching my head a little bit. I get that they want to send $48 million with David Price's contract and all that, but Mookie Betts, I don't think Boston should have gotten rid of because he was your guy, obviously. They do get outfielder, a catcher, and an infielder as well, so some prospects. But my big problem with Boston has been, and it was my problem with them last season, you got to develop your core. And I don't really see them doing that and developing a young star core, especially their pitching as well, which people have been going after for a while.
What I'll say is this. It's not a good look when you trade a top 5 player in the league to get under what is an imaginary salary cap in the luxury tax. They lessen the return that they could get for this prized asset by using him as a means to get off of David Price's money, or part of it. Now, Alex Verdugo has shown to be a good MLB player so far. His back is still hurt. He may not be ready to start the season. Jeter Downs is going to be an above-average offensive player. They got Connor Wong as well, but I think this is indefensible. And I thought it was interesting to me how the Dodgers, and they're not giving up Jock Peterson as they were in the initial trade. They got back Brusdar Graterol, who the Red Sox were thought he'd be a starter, but he's actually a reliever, which everyone knew he was going to be a reliever. I'm kind of smelling a little conspiracy. They saw the outcry to the return.
Let me throw you one more question real quick.
Got a bigger return.
Overall positive or negative for the Red Sox, since they're the ones?
No, it's a negative because you use your best asset and one of the 5 best players in the league
to
get off a Price. Another thing that's interesting, the Twins gave up a pretty hefty amount to get Kenta Maeda in there as well. I think the Dodgers killed it with this trade.
Definitely going to be a fun season if you're an LA fan. On Monday, the MLB proposed a potential change to their postseason system. This format would see 7 playoff teams per league, the best record getting a bye, and the second best team choosing their wildcard round opponent in a televised selection show. Brad, what are your thoughts on this proposal?
I'm probably in the minority on this one, but I like it. I think it's interesting. I think the idea of a selection show would be a lot of fun to watch. And most importantly, and maybe this is just the business side of me talking here, you know how much you could sell the rights to this show for to someone like DAZN or Peacock or Amazon. There's so many options here to make money from this. And just as a fan, I think the intrigue of, let's look at last year as an example. Would the Yankees have picked the Indians? Would they have picked the Red Sox?
But the
point of the playoffs, I think there's a lot of intrigue.
Here's my thing. The point of the playoffs is teams shouldn't be able to pick each other because that doesn't make it that fair. That's why you have seeding. That's why you have, standings in general. And I don't like this because it's all spectacle. I would like it if they actually had a bigger reason for doing this other than, let's just make it fun.
And I think another thing.
I don't get that.
Valid criticism, expanding the playoff field in a way. You might take a team that's like a 79, 81 win team, and they can say, we don't need to make moves. We can kind of squeak in there as the third wild card team and move from there. So to me, I get that aspect of it, but as a whole, I just think it would be a lot of fun. And I'm in the minority on it, I know.
I just think, in the past, let's just say since 2010, because now we're in 2020, so a decade later, how many rules, how many new things have been implemented that have bettered the quality of the MLB
Then we're getting into a whole discussion on what Rob Manfred's changes to the league have been. All that. That's a whole separate discussion.
I'm just saying I don't think this is a good move.
To each their own.
All right,
to each
fair
their
enough.
own. That's all the time we have here for the quick hitters. But stay tuned. The season premiere of One-on-One Sports for the spring rolls on. Last Thursday, the NBA trade deadline came and went, leaving many teams with roster shakeups. Many moves had teams throwing in the towel, while contenders bolstered up. The NBA also released a new All-Star Game format with special tributes to Kobe Bryant throughout the weekend. I'm here with Gray and Christian to talk about all of these things going on. So Gray, I'll go to you first. We're going to talk about the All-Star Game rules. What do you think of the new format?
Well, first off, I got to say, big fan of the Kobe tribute. Big fan of the charity work, but the formatting rules are kind of confusing for a non-fan. You're going to reset the score after every quarter and then give away the money. My opinion is just make it easier. Just give the winning team, let's say $500,000 to charity, and the losing team $250,000. So you get a nice, clean-cut format that everyone can follow. And so if you tune into the third quarter, you're not seeing a score of 24-19. It could be a little confusing for the average fan.
Sure. I just think it's going to be great. I think the quarter thing, I think it's going to keep it competitive and engaging. I think that the whole adding 24 points to the biggest lead and having every single NBA All-Star game is going to end on a basket, which is really cool. It could end on a buzzer beater, and it's just going to make it much more competitive and compelling throughout the whole game instead of just like the first 5 minutes. So.
Absolutely. I thought it was a little weird how, like you said, they reset the scores at the end of the quarters, but nonetheless, I think we can agree. Cool. Interesting moves at least.
For sure.
Indeed.
Teams that have multiple All-Stars, though, we're going out west. After the trade deadline, the Clippers got Marcus Morris, Lakers stand pat. Christian, Clippers, Lakers, who do you have as the favorite out west?
Oh, I have the Clippers. I think it was a great move for for the Clippers to take Marcus Morris away from the Lakers. So not only do you get him, but you keep another team from getting him. I think he's going to add versatility for sure. He's going to add three-point shooting, defense. He's tough. Him and Pat Bev are going to be like the heart of this team.
Yeah.
They're going to be the dogs. I think they have like 6 players that can guard LeBron now. Like they have what? Kawhi, PG, Morris, JaMychal Green, Patterson, even Bev. But all those people, they have a lot of people that can guard him. They have 6 players who average 10 points or per game. The Lakers have 3, and one of them's Kuzma, so that doesn't really count.
Greg?
You can't dog on my Lakers like that, though. I picked the Lakers to win the championship. I mean, you do add Marcus Morris. The Clippers do kind of steal him away from the Lakers. But you're talking about dogs of the Clippers. You got to look at the wolves of the Lakers, man. You got Anthony Davis and LeBron James. LeBron James leading the league in assists right now. He's the most versatile he's ever been in his career, averaging 10.5 assists per game. And you have Anthony Davis. You mentioned how 6 people can guard LeBron James. Who's going to guard Anthony Davis?
Montrezl Harrell.
So when Anthony Davis, who also has the highest three-point percentage in his career right now, so when he brings him out to the three-point line, you're going to bring out Montrezl Harrell and leave Zubac one-on-one in the paint?
Well, they're not going to be on the court at the same time. But nonetheless.
Okay.
Yes,
fair enough.
I get your point. Last thing, though, we just talked about the trade deadline. The best trade deadline, short-term and long-term. Gray, who do you have?
Short-term, I got to take your Clippers on this one. They did get Marcus Morris. They took him away from the Lakers.
I agree.
He does give one of those dogs.
Of course.
But long-term, I'm looking right here in the Southeast going with the Atlanta Hawks because you get Clint Capella as well, who gives you a great team-first center who's going to give you defense and rebounding to pair along with John Collins and Trae Young.
Listen, it's an underrated signing, but the future, it's an underrated trade, but the future success won't be because of Clint Capella. A. B, there's a reason why the Rockets got rid of Clint Capella. His free throw shooting's terrible. He's a one-dimensional player. Not going to make a difference, really.
But he gives you defense, which is drastically what the Hawks need. And the Hawks did keep John Collins and their first-round pick.
Where are the Hawks seated right now?
We're talking about long-term,
Second
buddy.
to last.
Trae Young, John Collins, Clint Capella. What do you need? You get DeAndre Hunter in last year's drafts, and what do you get this year with your second overall pick? You take Anthony Edwards, who is out of Georgia,
John
sells
Collins
tickets,
is fine
and
at
it's
center.
complete top 5.
One thing I think we haven't touched on with Capella is contract moving forward. 14 mil this year, 16, 17, 18. That's super affordable.
That's cheap in this
And all they gave
draft.
up, the 15th or 16th pick in this draft, plus expiring money.
Listen,
so the
and
value
And you keep your
short.
top 3 pick.
Long story short, Clippers are going to have the Morris trade has the most effect.
Yep.
For sure. Right
Agreed.
now,
Short
and
term,
that's the answer.
agreed.
That's for sure the answer.
One other team, long term, I just want to throw in there, Minnesota Timberwolves. Got off of Wiggins, got D'Angelo Russell in only at the cost of 1 first, Robert Covington into a first, and 2 long-term pieces. I like what they did this deadline.
I agree.
But also that does kind of scare me, though, because in a Slam article earlier this year, you had D'Angelo Russell say, me and Kat are going to get together, and then we're going to try and take away Devin Booker.
Signed for 5 years.
I know, and he's going to stay a Sun, and that's what we're hoping
They'll
for.
find someone.
But that's all the time we have here for the hardwood. Up next, we're going over to the diamond. Stay tuned. The Houston Astros won their first ever World Series in 2017. That banner now has an asterisk on it after allegations of cheating were proven by the MLB. We have 2 of our baseball analysts, Luis and Carson, to hash out what happened and to have a discussion on all the elements of this scandal. So Luis, Carson, either of you guys here, what is your biggest takeaway, I guess, from this entire scandal? Astros, league-wide, whatever it may be.
Okay, so I'm going to start. As a Yankee fan, I'm not with anything that the Astros did, obviously, as a baseball fan. But as a Yankee fan, it hurts me even more because we lost twice in the last 3 years. We made the playoffs 3 years in a row. We lost twice to them in the ALCS. Yep. One in 7 games and 1 in 6 games. And Altuve hit a walk-off home run last year against Aroldis Chapman. And hugging his jacket or hugging his shirt, don't take off my shirt because I'm embarrassed. I got in trouble by my wife last time. I don't know, buzzers, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, to be honest with you, yes, the Yankees do have a reason to be mad, but they have nothing compared to the Cleveland Indians.
Okay.
The Cleveland Indians had a whole playoff dynasty being created, and it got ruined by the Astros, and now they're rebuilding. They just traded Corey Kluber, and there's rumors they want to trade Francisco Lindor.
Well, the owner was going to do that anyway, but you are correct.
They got
you are
robbed
correct.
because
Yes.
of the Houston Astros.
Yes.
So what I'm getting out of you is you're saying the Cleveland Indians are only rebuilding because of the Houston Astros scandal. The only reason why they've lost in multiple playoff runs is because of the scandal.
I think not necessarily that they wouldn't be rebuilding now, but I think they'd have a lot more postseason success if it weren't for the Houston Astros.
Well, we're getting a little off with the Indians discussion. Bring it back here now. I think an interesting element of this, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, the players that are still there. Right, this morning they had the press conference, they trotted out Bregman and Altuve for a minute, they gave a little spiel, that was it. What are your thoughts on the players that are still there and how they've responded to it so far?
Okay, so I have a particular bone to pick with Alex Bregman. He was one of my favorite players to watch in the last couple of years. He was one of the most exciting players to watch as a baseball fan. He was cocky, but he could back it up. But now, what does he look like? He was cocky, but he was cheating. Why? That doesn't make sense to me. Makes no sense.
Well, personally, if I was the players, I would be actively just embarrassed. I would be absolutely embarrassed because you got caught for cheating. It took you 2 months to apologize. And Carlos Correa backed what the owner said and said that, oh, it didn't even affect it at all. You cannot tell me that not knowing the pitches that's being thrown at you doesn't affect your play.
I think it's also interesting, we look at the ramifications that came on Carlos Beltran, right? This legacy, surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, now a manager, this revered voice in the clubhouse after being a Hall of Fame player, and now what's his legacy, right? So I think there's so many elements with that, with pitchers who got shelled by them and never pitched again. So I think there's so many angles here. And I guess, Luis, back to you again, your biggest takeaway from this entire saga, we'll call it.
It was one of the biggest controversies, biggest scandals in baseball history, and it was just a domino effect. You see one team cheat, you see one team do something wrong, and many people who weren't even involved, weren't even on the team, are being affected. For example, the pitchers, like you were saying, in a lot of the leagues. Freddie Freeman was at a press conference, and he started crying because one of his best friends threw against the Astros twice when he got called up, and he got shelled, and that was the end of his career, and he retired because of it. And it affects lives. I mean, look at the guy. He's retired now. He's not going to be playing baseball for the rest of his life because of the scandal.
Personally, I think it really ruins my own opinion of these players, and it ruins my opinion of their legacy, and honestly, I feel like it just ruins the entirety of baseball for the Houston Astros.
The integrity.
And the one other thing, too, this team didn't need to be doing this. Look at the talent they had on this team.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Alex Bregman and Jose Altuve, arguably, Bregman, Correa, and Altuve, arguably the best. And Springer, yes, of course, but the infield alone. The infield alone, amazing. And they cheated to win a World Series. If you just played the game right, you probably would have won a World Series anyway.
Well, we could go on for ages about this, but that's all the time we have here at the Diamond. Next, we'll serve it up over on the tennis courts. Stay tuned.
The NHL trade deadline is just around the corner, and the excitement has already begun. The Pittsburgh Penguins struck first, acquiring Jason Zucker from the Minnesota Wild. Matt Laguza and Javik Blake are here with me to discuss the trade and their expectations for this year's deadline. So, Javik, after an attempt to land him this past summer, the Penguins finally did it, got Jason Zucker. What do you think about this, man?
It's a great trade, and they got Jason Zucker, and it didn't cost them Phil Kessel like they did last year. He fits in perfectly on that first line with Sidney Crosby, fills the void left by Phil Kessel, who left for Arizona a year ago. And it really proved that Pittsburgh's continuously gaining talent with Crosby and Malkin. They're poised for a great one, already one of the best teams in the league, and they're getting a guy who's going to fit in perfectly with Sidney Crosby, a player that can really be elevated, just like we saw Jay Gensel for the last few years. Isn't having the best season with the Minnesota Wild on ice. They're a team that's about 15% less of a threat shooting the puck than a league average team. It'll help him get better, and if he can play with Crosby and really elevate his play to what we saw with Jake Gensel the past couple of years, I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins are challenging the Washington Capitals for that Eastern Conference title.
Matt, what do you think?
I completely agree with that. He's a perfect fit. He fits perfectly in their offensive system, high-paced and aggressive offense. He scored 20-plus goals, 20-plus assists in each of the last 3 seasons, and he's under contract until the 2022-2023 season. So he's got control, he's got potential, he's still young at the age of 28, and as you said, he's going to fit perfectly on that front line with Sidney Crosby.
And he's putting up those type of numbers with the Minnesota Wild team that always seems to disappoint.
And then you add someone like a playmaker like Sidney Crosby on the line, that is just going to boost his potential.
You already have a second line that includes Evgeny Malkin. This team is poised for a great run. Battling the Capitals really for that Eastern Conference title at this point. It's really between those two teams.
Oh, for sure. And this is it. As you said, he's having a rough season so far. 14 goals, 15 assists. But now that he's on this line with Sidney Crosby, you don't know what he could do.
All right, Matt, so after the dust settles from the trade deadline, who are your players to watch going to be in the second half of the season?
So for me, I'm going to have to say Alexander Georgiev. He's backup goalie for the New York Rangers right now. And right now the Rangers are carrying 3 goalkeepers, including their young stud, Igor Shesterkin. He's showed that he's going to be the future in net for the Rangers. And the Rangers have a tendency to trade their backup goalies if you look at Cam Talbot and Antti Ranta. So I really think Georgiev is going to be traded at the deadline, and he's going to benefit a team like the Florida Panthers. They're 30-20-6 right now, fighting for a playoff spot, and they just spent a ton of money on Sergei Bobrovsky in net, who has a .889 save percentage this season. If you get a guy like Georgiev at the deadline, that is going to boost their defense on their team for the second half and really push them into a playoff
And
spot.
you don't usually see teams trading for goaltenders at the trade deadline,
Exactly.
but Georgiev really is sort of the best backup goalie to fit in a system, because the way with a backup goalie, you can kind of slowly ease him into the system like we saw a couple of years ago. You can just kind of work him into the system over the next couple of weeks, and then he'll be good to go for the playoffs.
Exactly.
All right, Javik, so who is your team to watch, or your player to watch, rather?
Jean-Gabriel Pageau, the center out of the Ottawa Senators, who are just a putrid franchise the last couple of years. They can seem to do nothing right. They have 10 pending unrestricted free agents at the end of the year. Gabriel Pageau is one of them. Number 3 on TSN's trade bait board. Obviously an unrestricted free agent after the end of this year. And he's an elite third-line center. 34 points in 54 games played for Ottawa, who just can't seem to score goals, can't seem to win games. If he gets traded to a team like Edmonton or Colorado, who both need center depth, especially the Edmonton Oilers, who just lost Connor McDavid for 6 weeks, he's going to fit in perfectly on that third line. Could also fit in on the third line at Colorado as well.
So, Javik, we move now to a team that we should watch in the second half.
Well, I just said that team, the Edmonton Oilers.
Right.
They lost Connor McDavid. They hold the rights to Jesse Puljujärvi, who's playing in the SM Liga in Sweden. He's been a player that hasn't really panned out over the last couple of years, but teams still seem to believe that he can become maybe a top 12 forward in the NHL. We'll see if that could happen, but he could potentially be traded, and he could be traded for a player like Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Ottawa would be looking for young players. They need a top 6 winger. They need a third-line center. Pageau fills that role of a third-line center. Chris Kreider, Mike Hoffman might be a little too expensive for a top 6 winger, but if they're trying to get that top 6 winger, Blake Coleman from the New Jersey Devils, 31 points in 55 games played on that second line. And New Jersey's a team that could be looking to sell at the deadline. They've lost a lot of good players.
Who is your team to watch?
So for me, the team to watch at the deadline is actually the New York Rangers. As we've seen over the past couple weeks, they have really improved, especially their first and second lines. And they've got a lot of players like Chris Kreider, Alexander Georgiev, Tony DeAngelo, who have really played well this season, who are going to be on the block for the Rangers. What I think is the Rangers are set for the next couple years. They really are. They're going to make a couple moves, especially on defense, because they're very young and they need some veteran presence. But they're going to trade a lot of these guys that are coming up on their contract years in a couple years and have a lot of potential to get those pieces and also still get some young guys, because as we saw this offseason, they acquired Panarin for the next 7 years. So they're looking at a 7-year project here where they can win continuously throughout these years. So they're still going to need those young players to come up and boost the potential of the team.
Well, that's all the time we have from the rink, but be sure to follow us on all social media at One on One Sports for more awesome sports debate content. Stick around. Major League Baseball doesn't start for another 6 weeks, but college baseball gets underway this coming Friday to fill the baseball void. I'm joined at the desk by Javik Blake and Zach Chofie to break down everything you need to know for the 2020 season. So, Javik, let's start for you. Who is your preseason pick to win the College World Series?
Well, they're ranked number 3 in the Baseball America poll, and that's going to be the Arizona State Sun Devils. They have Spencer Torkelson, maybe one of the best pure power hitters in all of college baseball. They lost Alec Marsh from a year ago, who was their best starter in 2019. But they return Eric Tolman and R.J. Dabovich, who's looking to bounce back after a strong showing in the Cape this summer.
I'm going with the Bulldogs of Georgia. They were 1 seed in the sub-regional last year, hosted sub-regional. Upset Auburn, goes ahead onto the super regionals over Georgia. I think they have a chip on their shoulder this year, returning 7 of their top 10 starters. And top 2 pitchers are back, and the number 1 pitcher, we're going to talk about in a little bit. He's something to watch out for.
So who is your number 1 pitcher, Zach?
And that is Emerson Hancock of the Georgia Bulldogs. It's a guy, 1.99 ERA last year, sub-2. They talk about SEC play, 1.69 ERA, sitting around 94, 95 miles an hour. I heard a rumor over the summer he's touched triple digits a few times, so it's going to be fun to watch.
It's impressive to look out for. My pitcher to watch is Kumar Rocker, the sophomore out of Vanderbilt. There is not a more exciting freshman in college baseball I think we've ever seen than Kumar Rocker. Named the top 2021 MLB draft prospect already. And this is a year before he's able to get drafted. He's got a fastball slider combo that's absolutely nuts. He's been working on a changeup too. And this is a kid who last year had 44 strikeouts and 28 innings pitched during the NCAA tournament. He's a pure pitcher. He's one of the best prospects we've ever seen in college baseball. Put together one of the best freshman seasons we've seen in college baseball. And if he can build off of that, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Do you see him getting better though, or plateauing? The thing with Hancock that I like is that he's going to get better with the fastball velocity through the roof now. I'm expected to see a big jump this year for him. Well, Rocker, it's hard to jump from what he did last year.
Well, for Kumar Rocker, he's got all the expectations, but he's a guy who stayed at Vandy all summer. He didn't play in the Cape League, didn't play for Team USA. He stayed at Vandy all summer to try and bulk up that arm weight and try and throw those balls faster, work on that changeup as well. And if he can do that, I mean, the sky's the limit for the kid.
So, Javik, we move off the mound now just to overall player to watch, non-pitcher. Who is it?
Well, it's a guy from New Mexico State playing out in the WAC. It's Nick Gonzalez, a second baseman. He's a junior this year, was the 2019 batting champion in the NCAA, hit .432. 2019 Cape League MVP, top 10 nationally last year in slugging, hits, runs, RBI, OBP, and total bases. He played 105 games last year, reached base in 102 of them.
Joe, you look
pretty impressive. You mentioned before Spencer Torkelson of Arizona State. The man can just hits.
That man can rake. One of the most beautiful swings I've ever seen.
Over 20 home runs both his freshman and sophomore year. Already projected #1 pick in the MLB draft this upcoming year, and that's not going to change unless he has a big drop-off. Only needs 25 home runs to break in to the top 10 in college baseball history for home runs, and he's only entering his junior year.
And this is with BB-Corp bats.
Yes.
Let me throw out just one quick, off the top of the head question. What team is going to surprise us the most in the 2020 season? Zach, we'll start with you.
That's a tough one. I mean, you look at the conferences that are shaking up, the SEC, Vanderbilt, Georgia, tough, but I'm looking for Florida. Florida's got some good young players coming up. Still young, mostly sophomores, but got a few top prospects coming in.
David?
I think if you're looking sort of all around out of the CAA, UNCW is a team that's impressed. They lost Greg Jones last year, but this is a team that this year they rebuilt a lot, and they're a team that really impressed last year in the regionals. If they can sort of build off of that last year, fill in the void lost by Jones, they could be a team to watch for, sort of a mid-major powerhouse.
Well, February 14th kicks off what will be 8 straight months of baseball, so buckle up and get ready. Stick around. We'll be right back with more of the season premiere of One-on-One Sports.
After his tragic and sudden death last month, we here at One-on-One Sports would like to send our condolences to the families, friends, and loved ones of Kobe and Gigi Bryant, as well as the 7 other helicopter crash victims.
Bryant was a legendary athlete in person who will be missed, and in honor of his legendary career and accomplishments, Brad and I would like to discuss our favorite Kobe Bryant moments. So, Brad, what is your favorite moment?
I couldn't decide between 2, so I cheated a little bit here. First one, obviously, we got to go with 81 points. Kobe Bryant cooking Jalen Rose in that game. It's one of the most iconic games and individual player performances in the history of basketball.
Without a doubt.
But to me, I think the moment that captures Kobe Bryant the most, as we see here, Kobe lighting up the Raptors for that 81. The moment that captures Kobe Bryant to me the most, April 2013, he tears his Achilles. He stays in the game with that torn Achilles to shoot the 2 free throws before going off the court. That, to me, encapsulates Mamba mentality, the warrior that Kobe Bryant was. They were playing the Warriors that game. So for me, just that moment right there, not just the game, that specific moment, he's obviously suffered a devastating injury, and he stays on the court because he has to make those 2 free throws. His team won that game by 2 points. That captures the essence of Kobe Bryant right there.
Without a doubt. And it was hard to pick a singular moment. Obviously, the 81-point game comes to mind for most people, or his last game, his farewell.
Yes.
I picked the moment he won the 2009 NBA Finals. Why? Because this would restart the Lakers' empire without Shaq for the first time. It was the first title Kobe had won, and it really cemented that he did not need Shaq's help to build up a team and bring the Lakers back to greatness. In the final game, he went 36-5, which is awesome. And we could talk about the 81-point game, as we said, but I just think this was a huge landmark in Kobe Bryant's career because it really set him as the guy who brought the Lakers back. And guess what he did in 2010? He went back-to-back.
Yep. And I think there's so many moments that we can talk about. outside of these ones, you mentioned there his last game, him just going absolutely off, and everyone in that arena feeding off of the energy, feeding off of the fact that this was Kobe's last game. We are going to get the most out of Kobe as we can in this last game. And Kobe went out there and balled. And everyone knew he was getting that ball. He was getting force-fed the ball every game, or every play of that game.
And rightfully so. It's Kobe Bryant.
No, rightfully so. But the point is just a perfect storybook ending for this guy, a top 10 player in the history of basketball, known for his scoring ability, to go out when he was clearly washed, as he showed that whole year, and to just absolutely ball out. The perfect ending for Kobe.
It was a good stamp on, the end of his career as well. And all things aside as well, he had a great time with his family as well after he retired. He was a great humanitarian. He gave back, and I could not think of someone with a better career or even life arc than Kobe Bryant off the top of my head. And it's just moving and also devastating what happened, but I'm glad that Kobe Bryant will be a name that's never forgotten.
Yep.
That's all the time we have for a spring premiere of One-on-One Sports.
If you like what you saw and you want to see more, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, all at One-on-One Sports.
Special shout out to our talent, crew, and you, the viewer, for tuning in.
We'll see you next week from the Jane and Brian Williams studio. But until next time,
whose side are you?